Mantashe bidding the delegates good night, or should I say good morning, because they are back again in a few hours. So let's see if we can bring up the numbers of the provinces that are going to vote, and of course the various leagues that are going to lend their support to those candidates that have been nominated for these 7 positions. The breakdown of it, let's see, we've got the Eastern Cape, 684. That's what it looked like in terms of the numbers. It's at 14.84%. So that's how much of the total number of votes that they get. KwaZulu-Natal, its delegation has increased from 18.84% to 19.79%. There were questions around this at some point, and you remember at the beginning of the conference, the issue of credentials, there were some questions raised about KwaZulu-Natal and allegations saying that they were locked out. And just going down, when we look at the total number of delegates, as you can see, 4,250, that was the initial number, is now down to 4,013. If you look at the NEC, the breakdown there by percentage point, 2.39%. For the ANC Women's League, Mkhize 0.49%, and this is what probably some are saying is part of the problem of the lack of representativity, why it is struggling so much. So what we're seeing there is the number of voting delegates who will be voting at the 55th National Congress, and voting gets underway at 9 a.m. as you heard Gwede Mantashe say earlier on, as they vote for the top 7 positions. Just a quick roundup of who that is. For the position of President Cyril Ramaphosa and Zweli Mkhize. For Deputy President Paul Mashatile, Oscar Mabuyane, Ronald Lamola. For Chair, Gwede Mantashe, Stan Matabata, David Masondo. Secretary General is Fikile Mbalula, Phumulo Masaole, Dumseni Ntuli. First Deputy Secretary General, Nomvulo Mkonyane and Dina Jumat Peterson. Second Deputy Secretary General, there you have Marupeni Ramaphosa and Ronald Lamola. And for Treasurer General, Gwen Ramaphosa has now been added to the nomination from the floor to join Pule Mabe, Pejani Chauke, Mswandile Masina, Lindiwe Sisulu did not garner enough numbers to make it onto this particular contest. Well, I think this is where we're going to leave it in terms of our live broadcast. For now, the ANC's 55th National Congress continues in just a couple of hours, as voting for those pivotal top 7 positions continue. It was top 6 at first, now it's top 7. The numbers can be somewhat confusing, I know, and this is why there was all of that acrimony and anxiety, frustration expressed there on the floor. We are back again in the morning with our team live from Nasrec as they continue to give you live rolling coverage from the ANC's 55th National Congress. From the team at the Globe here and those at Nasrec, it's good night for now. It looks like that. Just before we go, there is just one last word from my colleague Mswandile Mkhize, who's going to wrap up what has been a heady atmosphere, no doubt, particularly for those who are inside. Surely, Mswa, I'm not sure if you can hear me, if you were feeling the heat, not only from the floor in terms of the frustration, but weather-wise as well. It's certainly hot in this studio. Tell me a little bit more about it. What has it been like? And do you think it was a successful, though fraught, process? Mswandile, this is our political editor, Mswandile Mkhize, who is standing by as the delegates file out of the plenary session where they have just been nominating the top 7. Mswai, so how would you characterize the past couple of hours?
Well, a very good, is it good morning? Yeah, I think it's a good morning to you, SABC, and of course the viewers. It's been a long day, a night and the morning, whatever you call it. It's been really, really, really long. But of course, as you saw the scenes earlier, jovial mood, I guess the conference mood, but at times there were instances where you thought perhaps things are not going right, when there were those points of orders. But of course, somehow they did manage to get the situation under control. In fact, you still have a number of delegates who are still here, and then they're filing out, singing their various songs, and all buoyant, really. They all feel they've got this. And of course, we know that we'll only be able to know if whatever they believe is true when they have cast that ballot. And then the elections agency now has just gone to prepare the ballot paper. Remember, for the longest time we've been referring to the top 6. From tomorrow, it's no longer going to be the top 6, it's going to be the top 7, because they have added the second Deputy Secretary General. So during the constitutional amendments, that's one of the areas that they looked at. So the names are out there now, so we know those that have been on the ballot, the president and the position of president, which is CR. That's how they call him, his grouping here, Cyril Ramaphosa, and of course ZM, that is Zweli Mkhize. So, and there are a number of other positions that we've always been speaking about. So it's quite interesting to see what's happening here. But as I've said, so in a gathering like this, sometimes you are not able to get a really sense of where it is going, because sometimes you feel this grouping is more buoyant, and then the next minute they simply respond. So it will really be clear once the voting has started. We are going to reconvene here at 9 o'clock, where the delegates will now be able to start to vote for the top 7. And then, of course, it's a historic situation. It's always been the top 6, and then it's now the top 7. And I think the part of the consideration really of expanding it was to include the issue of gender representation, because if you look at some of the positions, they are contested only by women. So that does tell you that you will have at least more than one representation in the top 7.
Sondila, I want to touch on that issue of confusion, because at some point I saw Ronald Lamola, who's one of the directors of the elections agency. She herself seems to be flustered by that. Me, from the studio watching, I seem to get a little bit lost, because I do recall that the Northern Cape twice nominated Tina Joubert-Petersen. And when there was this announcement of the constitutional changes, that there are going to be 7 positions, we saw that play out live with Nomvula Mokonyane. There was a nomination for her as a Deputy Secretary General initially, but with the second nomination or second position added, then from the delegates there was frustration that why are you calling her Deputy Secretary General or First Deputy Secretary General when she actually was nominated for Deputy Secretary General. So will all of this play a role tomorrow? Because I really want us to set the scene. I myself find myself a bit confounded. And journalists asked these questions to Kgalema Motlanthe earlier on. Will there be people who have they been nominated for a position twice, as it were? Will they be voted for another round? What is the clarity on that?
Okay. I think it's very simple. I think one of the reasons there was confusion, Tsepiso, is because they had just introduced a new position. So somehow they were not sure how to handle it. And of course, we're not even sure how to call it. Remember, you initially had the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General. So what they've done now, they've added the second Deputy Secretary General. So some of the delegates here were arguing to say, because Nomvula was initially nominated for the Deputy Secretary General, it should stay as is. So there was a bit of confusion. Even the elections agency wasn't really sure. But of course, I guess those you would characterize as the teething problems of something that is new. So as time went on, so they were able to resolve it. And of course, delegates were a bit confused as well. But in the end, really, and then you had the proper nomination as we know it. So as now, all those names are on the ballot. So Nomvula Mokoyane, for example, is on that position that she had been nominated for. And someone who had been nominated along with her, Phoebe Potgieter, decided to decline. So now, then in her stead, then I think the Northern Cape, as you've correctly said, nominated Tina Joemat-Pettersson. So basically the original Deputy Secretary position would now be contested by Nomvula Mokoyane and Tina Joemat-Pettersson. So, and then of course the second one, so you have the new people who are coming in there. But otherwise, the situation seems to have been understood at the end, and everyone seemed to be happy. And then of course they are looking forward to voting for their new top 7 from tomorrow.
And I noticed that the frustration by some of the delegates was how this was, officiated, the issue that the room was clearly selected, designated by province and those who had voting rights or not. But then there were those who felt that it wasn't going according to the numerical order or alphabetical order or whatever order had been set out there, where the Northern Cape mentioned Tina Joemat-Pettersson twice. So therein was part of the confusion. Was it for the first and second Deputy Secretary General position, or was it that they were just emphasizing her nomination for first Deputy Secretary General?
Because there was a bit of confusion, they were actually not sure themselves. In fact, the elections agency also did cause a bit of confusion. But then in the end, as I'm saying, so they were able to give direction, even those delegates, to say no, with Nomvula Mokoyane, she stays in the position she was originally nominated for. So, and then with Phoebe Potgieter having withdrawn, and then Tina Joemat-Pettersson was then nominated for the position that Nomvula Mokoyane is contesting. So in the end, then it became clear that Tina Joemat-Pettersson is not necessarily being nominated for the second one, but for actually the original DSG position. So once that was cleared, so somehow it was able to move on.
All right, and that's where we will leave it so you can move on. So I'm sure you're pretty tired, as you mentioned, to follow those who are leaving the plenary hall so you can get yourself right, ready and fresh for tomorrow as voting starts for the ANC's top 7 position at the 55th National Congress. From the team here in Auckland Park and in Nasrec is goodbye for now. You're watching SABC News Channel. Please do enjoy the rest of your viewing here.